And to put it, I guess, simply, I think one of the interesting things about Bitcoin and why people become so convicted about it is because you see certain principles instantiated in this money. And
Hmm.
then you recognize that if they're instantiated in that money, then they're going to be instantiated in the people and the culture that it fosters. And to me, the two primary things that Bitcoin instantiates is incorruptible truth, and it uses incorruptible truth to instantiate individual sovereignty and freedom.
Hmm.
And these are kind of very religious concepts, right? An absolute truth that sanctifies the divine sovereignty of the individual. I mean, these permeate a lot of the different religious stories and philosophies that exist in the world. But those two things, if you think those are good principles, if you think truth and freedom are some of the highest ideals and principles, then you're probably going to align yourself with something that helps to instantiate, convey, and propagate those principles out into the world. And even more so, if they're instantiated in the thing that most communicates value and information to and through the world. And so what I'm really interested in, and as you mentioned with a lot of the podcasts these days, I mean, nobody cares about price. It's kind of a foregone conclusion that number go up over a certain period of time. But what's really important is saying, okay, well, when we have a system that communicates value like that can communicate the highest fidelity, the most pristine signal of value, which is a representation of our internal hierarchies, ever before. There's no distortion and no dilution in that signal. That signal goes out into the culture and to other people, and we also receive it back. And that feedback mechanism that gets established as a result of that relationship, I think allows for a more truth to emerge in the world than ever before. And in a world like today where there's so much lies, fraud, deceit, corruption,
Yep.
all of that kind of stuff built into the institutions because it is built into the money as a foundational, block in all those institutions. When you see that emerging and when you see the possibility of a replacement to that, then it instills in you a great sense of hope and excitement, and you begin to have these visions of what the world might look like if it was founded on a foundation of truth and individual freedom and sovereignty, rather than unfairness and lies and deceit and corruption. And I think the reason why this rabbit hole goes so deep, it's like what happens to the individual and to the culture, and as a result, the world, when incorruptible truth is the basis on which society and culture is founded. I mean, we've never really had that, and even the idea of incorruptible or absolute truth has typically been the domain of philosophical and religious endeavor. I mean, that's the only place where these ideas have been, available before, and now we have it instantiated in the most important mechanism for the communication of human values and principles, which is money. And I think, like you, I assume, it's going to foster a much improved world, not a utopia, right? Because what it does is it allows for the consequences of engaging reality and engaging one another to be laid bare, to actually be felt, So oftentimes when I use this type of language, people might accuse me of being a bit utopian, but I think it's rather the opposite. It's an acceptance of the reactions that occur as a result of the actions you take in the world. It's a reinstantiation of a more high fidelity cause and effect relationship between action and reaction, both on an individual and a cultural basis. And I think you require that in order to discover truth, right? About whatever it may be. If you discover truth in a market, if you discover a market is trying to, maybe not trying to, but one of the effects that it has is it discovers what are the things of the utmost value, because
Yep.
it is our expression of those things that we feed into the market, and the market then accommodates. And so the fact that communication can now be pristine, and that emergent process of discovering the highest values can now or will be able to take place absent distortion, dilution, intervention, I think is a tremendous boon for humanity. And we all love to imagine what will result from that.